Hi, Stephanie. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm so excited to have you on.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So how have things been going? What have you been up to?
I just bought a house in Madison.
Nice.
So I've kind of been very preoccupied with that, but I also just got back from like a 5-day writing retreat with some really cool people. So I've been trying to kind of balance moving with, pumping out songs.
Awesome. So let's get right into it. So what made you get into music in the first place?
Well, I think I have a different story than a lot of people. I wasn't someone who kind of grew up playing a guitar, listening to Hank. I actually started off as a dancer. I was trained as a classical ballerina and I trained with Alberta Ballet. And then when I was about 18, I got injured and I had to take a step back from that. And then I started acting. And then I ended up going to college for film production and creative writing. I spent a semester at the Iowa Writers Workshop. So I've done a lot of things before I got into music. But I was really, while I was kind of more focused on fiction writing, I got really into Southern literature. And I knew that I wanted to leave Vancouver. That's where I grew up. I knew I wanted to move. And I was just so drawn to so many of the stories and so much of kind of the literary culture of the South, that I ended up in Nashville, largely just to like see this part of the world and get out of my hometown. And then once I moved here, I realized, oh, like songwriting is a thing. And this is a way I can write and be involved in a community, because writing fiction and writing literature is a very, very solitary endeavor. So for me, I definitely took a really long route into country music, but I think the reason why my songs are so story-based and so kind of lyric focused is because I arrived at that place like through having more of a background in literature. And that's one thing I admire about country music, is that focuses, or should be in my opinion, like on the stories.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can totally hear that in your music. And I love that how like your journey is so like windy and like you did all these different things before that. And like I was a competitive figure skater, so I understand the ballet thing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
we both probably have so many knee injuries.
Yeah, well, I got taken out from an injury, and that's how I got into music too. So
oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you about your love of Southern literature, which mentioned earlier. So like, who are some of your influences with that? And if you could recommend a book or an author for people to check out.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's a good question. I would say like in terms of kind of like the classics, like mid-century authors, I mean, obviously Faulkner is super influential, but it can be a little dense. I really love Flannery O'Connor as well. She was a Catholic Southern writer, which is, I think a lot of her stories are subliminally like about the tension of not being Protestant in the South, I guess. I don't know. And they're also like very gory and like lots of people die, and there's like, I love them. They're great. Also Zora Neale Hurston writes beautifully. I love her stuff. And then in terms of like some more contemporary voices, I love Cormac McCarthy. Yeah, I would start with Flannery O'Connor. Read the Misfit by Flannery O'Connor.
Awesome. I will check that out.
Yeah,
and hopefully
it's dark, but it's also funny.
Okay, hopefully listeners check that out as well. And so like when you moved to Nashville, did you just sort of like pick up a guitar and kind of teach yourself? Like how did the actual music part kind of come about in
for sure. I grew up playing, like I had to study piano for ballet. So I grew up reading music, and I was in a very musical family. My dad is a saxophone and clarinet player, and then my brother's actually like a professional guitar player. And he actually was a ski racer, and he got injured around the same time I got injured in ballet. And I think we both kind of just picked up the guitar casually around the same time, because we were both like injured at home with nothing to do. So I was kind of playing for fun all throughout college, but I didn't play any shows. I was literally just like playing alone in my room or with my brother and like writing songs for myself.
Cool. So yeah, did you find like your ballet sort of helped you at all with like your music, like with the discipline or anything like that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure figure skating's done the same for you.
Yeah.
I think with elite sports, like it does attract more type A people, and this industry is I think there's a lot of people that are a little more go with the flow. But ballet really taught me how to be like super structured and disciplined with my time and my goals and my work ethic. And sometimes I think there's a lot to be, I've learned a lot from some of my friends down here that are not that way. And I've learned how to be a bit more flexible from them, but I'm definitely glad like for the discipline that it's instilled in me. And I also, and I'm sure you find the same way with skating, but like, I think dancing is like singing with your body.
Mm-hmm.
So I already had a really good idea of things like phrasing and rhythm from that.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. So let's get to some music. So you picked you picked our playlist. So the first song you have for us is your song called Idle Hands. So what's the story behind that song?
It started off as me actually just needing like an up-tempo song for my EP. It's not that glamorous. So often I think some of the best songs, whether they're things I've written for other people or things I've written for myself, they really do come from like a practical need, and then you learn how to be creative within those parameters. So yeah, I needed an up-tempo song, and I was playing around with some bluegrass chord progressions. But I had this hook in my head for a few years about the devil being in the market for a pair of idle hands. And I knew it was going to be just a bunch of vignettes of like people doing bad things when they get bored in a small town. I think it just took the pressure of recording an album soon for me to finish the idea and find the right groove for it.
Awesome. So here is Idle Hands. So you do a lot of co-writing and writing for other artists, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Do you find like there's a difference when you write for yourself compared to when you write for other people or with other people?
For sure. And that's something I'm really trying to learn how to navigate right now, because when I moved here, once I realized songwriting was like a career one could have, I was super, super focused just on writing for other people and doing the music row thing. And I was really, really lucky. I signed my first publishing deal within like a year and a half of being here, which I'm so blessed for. But having all those opportunities early on really encouraged me to keep on, pumping out songs for other people and pumping out more kind of commercial stuff. And it was really within the last year and a half that I kind of was like, I love the craftsmanship of commercial radio country, but I have so much more to say. And I find that when I'm writing for other people, I really just put on a different hat. Like I really approach it as what's going to sell, like not in a depressing way, but just, you're dealing with a different, dealing with different creative limitations when you're trying to think about, okay, how do I say it in the way that is going to speak to a lot of people across the board? That's kind of the question I'm trying to ask myself when I'm co-writing. When I'm writing for myself, I kind of think, how am I going to say this in a way that like weirdos like me would find it interesting, which is a very small percentage of the population, much more niche market. So yeah, I think I'm just trying to appeal to different audiences depending on whether I'm writing by myself or whether I'm co-writing. And I am really lucky that I have a few artists I work with that I think are kind of straddling the line between having mainstream appeal and wanting to say something. And I think those are the artists that I always have the most fun writing with, artists that also see themselves as writers, see themselves as a little bit left of center. Yeah, just trying to find a balance.
Is there one like you prefer more than the other? Like, do you prefer writing for yourself more than other people, or is it like the same?
It's pretty even. I really do. Like, I love writing with myself, but there's, the collaboration is really fun. And it kind of keeps me invested. Like, I would think I would get very lonely and bored if I wasn't going out to Music Row and like being around people and hanging out, a few times a week. So it's, maybe it's more of a social thing. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. Why not? And like, cause your songs that you write, they're very like intricate and very like, there's a lot of depth to them. So like, where do you get the inspiration from that, like for that?
I would say that's a good question. I mean, it just kind of comes to me. I've lived a lot. I've been through a lot of stuff, and I've always been really interested in other people's lives. I like interviews are awkward for me because I always like asking other people questions and learning about them. Like, I think I just try to be really observant about the world, and both having like lived a lot of different lives and being curious about other lives. I think it's kind of a state of being, just always being curious.
Awesome. That's a great way to be too. And I find like your creativity tends to flow more when you are curious about life and other people and just how things are,
Yeah, for sure. And it's, I've seen a lot of your stuff on TikTok too, so I'd be curious to know how you feel about this, but I find it kind of hard to straddle that with social media often, because so often I feel like in the last year or two, I haven't had the time to just be bored and think, because there's always this white noise in my head from having to kind of stay abreast of the social media part of being an artist. And I'm grateful for the opportunities it's given me, but it is this weird thing where I feel like it's harder to be creative and harder to be curious, I guess, when you're just like constantly distracted.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I find I have to like put it away and not look at it for a while, and then I'll start being more creative, like either with this podcast or my own music. And not have meltdowns every other day.
Right? Oh my god, it's so real.
Awesome. So let's get to some more music.
Like a cat.
Oh, that's okay. My cat's been trying to get in the door. So
okay, cool. Both of us.
So the next song you have for us is Good Lord Laurie by the Turnpike Troubadours, which I love, and I appreciate when anybody plays Turnpike on the show. So what made you pick this song?
They're my favorite band. I'm so glad you love them too. Didn't get tickets. I literally tried to get tickets to like, obviously the Ryman. I tried to get tickets to all their shows in Texas. Like no luck. I'm so sad. But I picked Good Lord Laurie just because I think it's not like my most favorite song in their catalog, but I think it is a really good gateway drug for people to get into Turnpike Troubadours. So I hope people check it out and listen to it. And I think it really exemplifies, like, I was talking with some friends this morning who write more kind of like in the Texas red dirt scene. And we were talking about like, why have they been able to get so astronomically popular over other artists who have a similar sound? And I think what they do so well is that their sound and their energy and their subject matter is much more, I think, like gritty and interesting than mainstream radio country music, but they still have that clarity to their lyrics, and they still like will land on a lyrical hook, which is a very Nashville thing to do, but they're just doing it with different subject matter and different melodies. Whereas I think a lot of red dirt music sometimes doesn't have the same like lyrical discipline as Music Row has. So I just think they're the best band that manages to kind of combine the best of both worlds. They have like the raw, gritty edginess and subject matter of Texas music with kind of the lyrical discipline that I see a lot more in Nashville.
That's a very good observation. Never thought of that. Are you excited about their comeback?
Yes, I'm so excited. Are you excited?
Yes, definitely.
What's your favorite Turnpike song?
Honestly, I always go back to Winding Mountain Stair Blues, Winding Stair Blues.
Oh yeah,
that one.
It's super fast.
Yeah, I like when I used to go to the gym, I'd like go on the treadmill and just go with that song. But
I know, it's so good. I think that they're so great because they literally have a song for like any type of mood.
Yeah, but yeah. Anyway, well, here is Good Lord Laurie by Turnpike Troubadours. So I read that you want to save the murder ballad and how mainstream country has sort of become sanitized and doesn't really tend to go into those more darker subject matters, at least not recently. And you wrote one called On the Ohio. So could you talk a little bit about the murder ballad and your paving the way for it to come back?
Totally. Yeah. I thought, I just think like it's pretty recent that I think country music has got so cleaned up. You know, even in the 90s, you had songs that were like about, you know, And the Thunder Rolls and Alyssa Lies and like even
Goodbye Earl.
Goodbye Earl. What's that Martina Brett song? Freedom Ring.
Independence Day?
Yeah, Independence Day. Like that's still about a woman like burning her house down to kill her husband. So I mean, I just think that it's interesting. I think country music used to sit in this space of like being a place for, you know, the darker parts of society to feel represented, or darker stories to feel represented. And I feel like in the last 15 years, it's done a 180. And now it's like, you can only be wholesome and talk about your wife and your porch swing and your dog and beer. And it's so like, not like the roots of the genre were just so enmeshed with, you know, folk songs that had to do about drugs and drinking and murder. So it just seems very surprising to me that it's become so clean. Well, you know, pop culture in general, it's not like that's getting clean. Like, you know, if we're allowed to have WAP, which is wonderful, we should be allowed to have like country songs that talk about uncomfortable things. So, yeah, I don't know. I really am into old time music and old folk ballads, and I want to kind of find a way to bridge the roots of the genre with songs that manage to talk about things in a bit more of a contemporary sound.
Yeah. And do you think like it's mostly radio creating that? Like the programmers and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so complicated, right, to ask like, why is radio what radio is?
Yeah.
There's so many factors. I mean, the consolidation of radio stations in the late 90s, I think, was huge. You know, now we only have 4 major radio companies. And it used to be that like individual DJs actually had a say, and that hasn't been the case for the last 20 years. So that's a huge part. You know, radio is just dying financially. That's a huge part. Like, there really is, I understand from a business perspective, there's a lot of pressure to have crossover pop hits to make more money, because the only way, you know, labels and writers are making money still so often is from radio success. So I think that's just, it's a symptom of there just not being that much cash to go around and needing to appeal to like the lowest common denominator. And I fully, as a business person, understand that. It's just, yeah, I always am happy when I see spaces that allow for, you know, music that's maybe not trying to reach everyone.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I think that's the best music is when it's tailored to a smaller audience.
Oh, for sure. Do you think like, I don't know, like, cause you're more in Nashville, you're kind of in there. Would you say,
are you in Nashville?
No, I'm in Canada.
Oh, wait, where?
In Toronto.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm from Vancouver.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm actually, my brother lives in Toronto, and he's coming down here next week. And I've spent lots of time in Toronto. I did not know you're Canadian. That's very cool.
Yeah, I tend to keep on a low profile, but
yeah, no, honestly, same. Me too.
Anyway, what I was saying is, do you think like, because music tends to go in cycles, right? So do you think things are going to start opening up for more creativity, like having more of those types of songs, or do you think it's going to keep going? I don't know, just your thoughts.
I don't think it will for radio. I think country music has always followed the sound of pop. Yeah, I am encouraged as like pop music is leaning away from more, like, if country music is always going to borrow elements from what's on pop radio, what's been on pop radio for the last 10 years has been a lot of like synthetic beats, trap music, R&B influences, which are great for what they are. But when you try to mix those more synthetic musical elements with country music, I think it's dumb, because like what country music does great is has great instruments. Yeah. So that, I don't think over the last years has been a great marriage of country music with loops and tracks and beats. But I think what's happening, like we're seeing a bunch of pop punk in music right now, in pop music. And like, I think that's country will start to follow that. It already has with like Hardy's new rock project. And at least that is going to lend instruments back into country. So I'm a little optimistic about if pop music starts getting more rock influenced. Yeah, it will allow country to do what it does best with its instruments. But I also think the whole question of like radio and what is considered mainstream is getting really complicated now, because, you know, you look at the streaming numbers of someone like Tyler Childers are higher than the streaming numbers of Matt Stell, who had 3 number ones last year but can't even sell at a club. Yeah. Versus someone like Tyler, who had 0 radio play but has higher streaming numbers and can sell at arenas. So it's, you know, the question of like what is mainstream, I think, is getting harder and harder to define. Yeah. Because a lot of, or, you know, even Turnpike, like a lot of non-radio artists can sell more tickets than radio artists can. So I don't think radio is going to get more creative, but I think country music as a whole is getting a lot more creative. And, you know, I think things like social media and streaming platforms are allowing people to find really, really great music without relying on radio.
Yeah, you don't really need it too much anymore.
No, the thing I will
no matter what anyone says.
Yeah, exactly. The only thing that is scary about that is that, like from a songwriting perspective, the only way you can make money is from radio.
Yeah.
Because it's great as an artist to now transition to, you know, our artists used to make money from radio play, from mechanical sales, and from live shows. And now artists are only making money from live shows. Sorry, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, cut up. I know, sorry, I'm getting into the business here, but I think about it.
That's
all the
okay.
time.
No, it's interesting. Yeah.
Like, so if artists are no longer making money from radio, because a lot of them aren't getting played on radio, and mechanical sales because no one's selling CDs, artists are only making money from their live shows. Or like, you know, artists like Turnpike or Tyler are only making money from their live shows, which is great that they can reach that and find that and make money from that. But as a songwriter, you aren't really making any money from an artist's live show. So unless you are writing for an artist that has a top 40 cut or a top 40 hit, you aren't seeing any money, even if that artist is making a shit ton of money on tour. So I think that is one thing that part of the reason I've leaned into my own project is just because I've had a lot of cuts as a songwriter that have done really, really well streaming wise. And the artists are, you know, touring extensively, but I'm not seeing any money from those songs because they aren't getting played on primary radio. So that's one thing. That's the only caveat to like radio dying. Maybe it's better for creativity, but then we need to find a way to pay out songwriters who write the songs that aren't getting played on radio, but still have really high numbers. Yeah.
And I think maybe it's just sort of pivoting, like finding new ways to create revenue, maybe with songwriting.
Yeah.
Other avenues too. And I'm sure like,
or I don't know. I think it should, I think there's that. And then I also think, you know, if in the past the idea was that songwriters were getting a cut of what artists are making, because artists were making money from mechanical sales, it should pivot so that artists are songwriters are still finding a way to make a percentage of what the artist is making with their song. So I think a big solution is actually to be figuring out some sort of royalty system where our songwriters are making royalties from live shows, if that's going to be the biggest money maker for artists.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and just trying to figure out how because everything's always changing, right? And trying to keep up and make sure everybody is like getting paid what they're owed and what they're worth, and even just for it's interesting to see where things are going to end up. And
it is, and it's like no one has the answers, and you know, people on Music Row every day are trying to figure out how to make it work for their writers. But you know, you just have to hope that good music finds people and makes you enough money to make the next record. Yeah, for sure. Well, let's get to some of that music. Okay. The next song you have for us is your song called Presidio. Did I say that right? Presidio. I rehearsed that and I listened to it and I said it wrong still. Oh, you're good.
Anyways, so what's the story behind that song?
That one I wrote about a year ago before I went in to record my EP, and it was one of those rare songs that actually comes pretty quickly. I tend to really think about my lyrics and spend a lot of time, but this one just kind of fell onto the page. And it's just about a time in my life that I was really low and like doing a lot of dumb shit. And, you know, I think I was kind of trying to grapple with how you can move past your more self-destructive tendencies, but you never fully move past them. And like, there's always this part of me that is scared of myself, and scared I could fall back. And I think that's what that song's trying to grapple with. But it's also just really, I was, you know, trying to explore different melodies and different chord progressions. And I write from a pretty like dual lyric and music place, I think. And I'm just really happy with the way the lyric and the melody came together on this one.
Yeah, it sounds really good. I love sort of the beginning. It's kind of softer in the beginning and builds up.
Yeah, it was really fun to record. The band took it in a totally different way than I was expecting, but I'm so glad they did because I'm really happy with the vibe.
Awesome. Well, here is Presidio. Music isn't always the easiest of career paths. So what motivates you to keep working towards your dreams?
That's a good question. I think, first of all, because it's fun.
Mhm.
Like, and that's another thing I love about co-writing is like every day you're just hanging out with your friends. Like today I had 2 back-to-back writes, and one of them we sat on my porch and we just like I made sweet tea and we just hung out and shot the shit. And then I went to a label downtown to write another song with one of my friends and get to walk in and see all these cool gold plaques on the wall. Like it's just it's fun. Like the process is fun. And I think that's the biggest thing is you need to be enamored with the process as much as the finished product. So that keeps me motivated, the fact that I just enjoy it. And then the other thing is like, despite all of the like drugs and like sex and cheating and killing in my songs, I am very faith-based. I'm Anglican or Episcopalian, and in my faith there's this real idea of like vocation and knowing that everyone is so unique and everyone has one thing that they can do really well and one specific gift, and to not use that gift and to not celebrate it is to not be grateful for the gift itself. And I really do feel called to do this. I feel like I can do the most good in the world through writing stories that help people, and not help people from like a presenting better morals. Talking because none of my songs do, they're all awful. But like helping people by connecting with them where they're at and helping them not feel so alone. I think that when you're going through recovery or addiction or bad habits, which so many of my songs talk about, it doesn't help people to say like, look at this other beautiful life you could have if you stop doing this. It helps to just be with them in it. And I think that's what I try to do with my songs. And there's definitely a sense of calling there as well that keeps me motivated.
Awesome. I love that. So kind of going a little bit further, what's one lesson that you've learned so far with your music career?
I don't know if I'm far enough along to give advice.
Whatever. Something that you've learned. I would say, just something that you've learned or taken away from it.
I mean, I think like that you are going to do like the only thing you can do best is you. And I've kind of learned that the hard way because I think that I'm disciplined enough and I'm kind of like business minded enough to have learned how to write like a pretty great radio song, but that's not me and that's not my particular gift or talent. So even if I can write a pretty great radio song, it's not going to be as good as a Josh Osborne song. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like what I can do really well and what nobody else can do is write a Stefanie Joyce song. And that sounds so corny. And I think maybe what I've learned, it isn't just that, like be authentic to yourself. It's kind of just like accepting that, being authentic to yourself might not mean that your career looks the way you thought it would look. Like I'm accepting that my own unique point of view is pretty niche and it's going to reach a pretty like defined audience. And my other option is to reach a large audience, but like be a mediocre version of someone else and not have fun. So I would guess the lesson would be like, be okay with the outcome and just care about the authenticity.
Yeah, that's great. Do you find that like that's something you have to think about, or like do you find that it just kind of comes naturally for you?
I mean, I think I have to balance it.
Yeah.
And balance it with your schedule. Like there's still some writes where I feel like I'm not going to be the most authentic version of me, but it's with an artist that like I love as a person and I respect what they're doing and they have a lot of momentum. Like I'm not going to not.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just finding a balance, and also I guess just, coming, and I'd be curious to know if your skating background's like this compared to music, but for me coming from dance where I had like Russian teachers yelling at me as like a 9-year-old, and like acting and film, and I was also in modeling, like coming from all these other industries, music is a walk in the park in terms of the type of people I work with. Yeah. Like people say you need a thick skin in music. I'm like, not compared to literally anything else in the arts. So yeah, just kind of like that has been nice. I would like to tell myself when I started off that like people are not as scary as your Russian ballet mistress. So don't be so scared of publishers and bookers and label people. Like they're all really, really nice.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I do remember the Russian, I did ballet as well. Not like to your level, but I had to do it for the skating. I had the Russian ballet teachers. I had the Russian skating coaches and yeah. I understand what you're saying.
It's a certain way.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to some more music. The next song you have for us is called Pretty Sorrow. Is that how to say it? Sorrow?
Yeah, Pretty Sorrow.
Sorrow. By Rhiannon.
Yeah.
Giddens. She was on Nashville. The show.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, she was. She was like on the last season, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So what made you pick this song?
I love Rhiannon's voice.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned so much from her vocal styling. I think she was classically trained as an opera singer. I could be wrong. I might be mixing it up with someone else, but she sounds like she is. Like she just has incredible vocal technique, but she's not a showy off belter.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think her ability to showcase her technique through like stylistic choices versus, you know, belting or something is just really admirable. So first and foremost, like my mother-in-law actually showed me her first record and I just fell in love with her voice. And the way she approaches her voice as an instrument. And then I also really think she does a wonderful job of, you know, reclaiming country music from a Black perspective and just recognizing that the roots of the music are so rooted in Black traditions. You know, she's done a lot of work on showcasing like how the banjo is an African instrument.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always hesitant to like make that be the focus of her work, because for me, she's also just a really, really great artist and vocalist and writer. She has so many great story songs too. I think she does them very well. She manages to tell so much in a very understated way. And this particular song I chose because it's based on it's a folk song that probably has British origins or Appalachian origins. And a lot of the vocal inflections she does are very, very typical to like old time music and the way songs would have been sung at the turn of the century, you know, often unaccompanied. This is a very, very old song. It probably has roots in Britain dating back to, you know, the 1700s. So a lot of those, one of my really big influences, I don't think you see it directly in my work, but one of my really big influences are like super old folk ballads. And I just love her interpretation of it.
I can see that in your music, the old folk ballads. Get that vibe.
Cool.
Going. Awesome. So here is Pretty Sorrow by Rhiannon Giddens. So what does country music mean to you?
That's a hard question.
Yeah.
I think that it means, I think it's a genre of music that is largely defined by its ability to tell stories and really showcase great musicianship. I think that's what makes it unique from other genres. I would say hip hop also really showcases great lyrics. But aside from that, I would say it's probably like the most lyrically interesting genre, and country musicians I think are some of the most talented musicians in any type of, you know, popular music. So I think that's what it does best. I think there are so many different shades of country music. You know, what does radio country have in common with like the Appalachian folk scene right now? Not that much, except for the fact that I think at the end of the day, the people that get into it want to tell stories. And I think that makes it really unique.
Awesome. Okay, so the next song you have for us is one you co-wrote called Treasure. I love this song. It's so good.
Yay.
It's so smart. Like,
thank you.
And it's done by Mary-Heather Hickman. So what's the story
Yeah.
behind this song?
Well, Mary-Heather is my best friend. I was talking earlier about like my favorite artist to co-write with, and she's definitely one of those because she's, I think, managing to find a way to do commercial country and also like have a point of view.
Mm-hmm,
and you know, though I still love commercial country music, and those are the type of commercial artists I want to work with. You know, people like her, people like Hayley Witters and Lainey Wilson and Ashley McBride. Coincidentally, they're all women. I don't know what that says, but you know, like you can find a way to have a radio sound and a radio melody and still say something in your songs. And she is 100% one of those people. I'm so excited to be working with her, and she's a great BFF. But anyway, we wrote this song talking about how like we both have like a really, really like trashy aesthetic when it comes to guys we think are hot. It was during quarantine. I'd made my husband grow like a greasy 70s porn mustache during quarantine. I was like, babe, I love this on you. And, yeah, we were just talking about like our like terrible taste and drinking some margaritas, and we sat on it for a while, but we got the first verse really, really quickly, and we didn't know like what the chorus was going to be. We didn't know what the payoff was going to be. We just had these really great verses about trashy guys. And then someone to me said like one man's trash is another man's treasure. And I was like, that's it. There's something there. So then we sat down with a bottle of tequila and finished the song.
Awesome. I love that. It's such a good line, how it like that chorus.
I'm so glad. Yeah, it was really fun to write.
Well, here is Treasure by Mary-Heather Hickman. All right, so the last part is 5 quick questions. So whatever comes to your mind first, just for fun. So the first question is, what is your favorite snack food?
Snack food?
Yeah.
Strawberries.
Oh. One place you'd love to travel to?
Spain.
Favorite holiday?
Christmas.
Cats or dogs?
Cats, 100%.
And favorite TV show?
I don't really watch TV, but I did get into Euphoria, and it's very well done. Nice. It's very dark.
Yeah. And where can people find you?
I am on all the social platforms, especially TikTok and Instagram. Stefanie Joyce Music on both of them. YouTube, Stefanie Joyce. Those are like the 3 things I'm kind of the most active on.
Yeah, and I'll have those all linked in the show description, so you can just hit the links and you don't have to search for it. And you also have an EP coming out, right?
I do, yes. I'm gonna have Presidio out in 3 weeks, so this will probably be lining up with that.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna probably put out the full project in June.
Okay.
Yeah, I worked with it. Kyle Manor was my producer. I actually met him because he was doing the vocals for Treasure. And I was in the studio that day, and he was like, do you want to hop in and do harmonies? And I was like, lol, sure, like, I guess. And then I just was like, oh my gosh, I love working with this guy in the vocal booth. And then I asked him to produce my EP, and he was kind enough to say yes. So yeah, EP is called Marlboro Reds and Motel Rooms. It's coming out in June, produced by Kyle Manor. Most of the songs I wrote by myself. There's one on there that I wrote with Mary-Heather and SJ McDonald. I'm really excited to share it with people.
Awesome. So be on the lookout for that. It's gonna be good. I've already listened to some of the songs, so
yeah.
So the last song you have for us is "It's Waiting Around to Die," right? By Towns.
Yes.
Okay. The last song you have for us is "Waiting Around to Die" by Towns Van Zandt. What made you pick this song?
Towns Van Zandt is one of my all-time favorites. He really got me into country music, I would say, and just like his lyricism and the fact that he like doesn't hold back from just being completely depressed, like just lets it go. And all of his songs are total downers, but like sometimes they're exactly what you need. And he has this one quote that I have pinned above my desk, or I will once I'm done unpacking. And I've had it there I discovered him like before I was even doing music. And it says, my only job as an artist is to elevate my own state of grace, and thus the state of grace that anyone who listens. And that's something I kind of try to live by.
Aw, I love that. It's so nice. Well, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you. It was so great talking to you.
Yeah. And thanks so much for listening, and be sure to come back next week for more country music. So